Hello. Okay, so before I start, Dorothy, you asked some really good questions. You said how are they used in debate, are they values or framework, etc., right? Okay, so first of all, they're not values. The values would usually be morality or justice. And in your case, under under the value should be the value criterion. So basically, it's all part of the framework. The value criterion, the justifications for it. If you're not sure about what the framework looks like, I actually have a previous video I made last year for one of my friends to help her out that explains the framework and contentions. So you can look at that. And then, so Util and Deon are actually under the value criterion. So usually a case would look like this. The value would be morality, and then the value criterion will be maximizing life. That's going to be most of the cases in novice and JV. So most of your freshman year will be something like that. So basically, maximizing life will be util, because you're trying to maximize good, maximize happiness, and maximize life. That's util. So it'll be usually in the value criterion. It usually won't be like my value criterion is util. It won't be like that. But the generic idea of their value criterion will be either util or Deon. Okay, so yes, what other questions did you ask? Okay, cool. And you wanted to know about the arguments themselves and the refutations. So the lecture begins. Okay, so basic overview of each concept. I gave you guys a document that explains this. Okay, util is basically a course of action that maximizes good and maximizes well-being, and the well-being is usually defined by happiness. And it basically uses people as a means to an end. So you're saving you're killing one person to save the lives of 3 people. So that one person is a means to an end, and the end would be saving those 3 people. Some famous authors, I made a list, and I'm not going to read that because that's a waste of time. There's actually 2 types of util. I wasn't actually taught this my freshman year, so I wanted to teach you guys because I was pretty sad that I wasn't taught it. Act util is basically talking about how it says that a person's act is morally correct if it produces the most amount of well-being and happiness that any act that person does at that time could possibly do. So should I eat an ice cream or should I eat a cookie? Which one is better at the time, right? And then, or could I do something else in that time? Rule util talks about how an action is correct and good as long as it conforms to a rule that leads to the greatest good. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Deontology. So deontology talks about it judges the morality of an action by the action itself. So is this action moral? Not whether the consequences are moral, but is this action moral in itself? And it uses people as ends in themselves. For instance, you can't kill that one person to save the 3 people because you need to evaluate that person and their right to life as an entity in itself. You can't just take away that in order to save more people. So, yeah. Okay. And then there's some famous authors to that as well. And some important terms are listed, and if you have any questions you can ask me, but they should be pretty self-explanatory, and they're also not that important as at this moment. So, first, answer to util. Answer to util is an anti-util. This is not necessarily deontology, it's just anti-util. So util is about maximizing pleasure, but there's a whole bunch of different types of pleasure. For instance, pleasure of sleeping, pleasure of eating an ice cream. How do you weigh this? Everybody's going to weigh it differently, so how do you have a system that can account for all of these people and all of their different evaluations of happiness? By the way, I'm super Deon biased, and Hazik is super util biased, so my arguments might be a little bit different. But they're all valid arguments. Okay, second of all, util fails to distinguish between acts and omissions. I defined omissions in your important terms, but it's basically holding back from doing an action. So basically, util fails because at this point, because I'm explaining this to you, I'm not in Africa saving the children who are starving. I'm not in the East Coast saving people from Hurricane Sandy. Therefore, I'm doing something immoral because I'm explaining this to you. But as you can see, you can't always do the best possible thing, so util would fail. Third thing is that util is evaluated by the consequences of the actions. This was explained during your lecture on Friday, but you never know the last consequence of an action. And I gave this example. For instance, I give Harish my homework and he copies it. Okay, so he gets 100% on his assignment. That's good, right? Okay, but because I gave him my homework, for the future homeworks he keeps on copying. So he ends up not knowing what's going on. So he fails a test, and then he fails another test, and then he fails another test, and then he fails the class. So now he has really bad grades and he can't get into a good college. Okay, so now he can't get a good job. Is it good or bad now? But because he doesn't have a good job, he sits on the street and he plays chess with strangers, like a lot of hobos do. And this one stranger recognizes he's really good at chess. So he enters Harish into a contest. And Harish wins this contest and earns $1 million. Now is my action good or bad? But, as you can see, it will go on and on. Also, for util, there are a lot of borderline cases. For instance, okay, one person versus 1 million people. If I kill this one person, I can save 1 million. Well, that's kind of obvious, right? But what if it's 5 million and 5 million and 1? Now the difference is a little bit harder to evaluate. What if it's 10 million and 10 million and 1, right? Also, number 5, it takes away the value of someone's life. For instance, because of the fact that they're being mathematically evaluated, they're no longer human and they're being objectified, which means that in turn you're actually taking away their value by weighing them equally. Okay, util collapses into violence. Util justifies killing a whole bunch of people killing a whole bunch of people if they don't help the cause. So if they don't help with the overall good, then you're justified to take them away, which is kind of not moral. Okay. 7, util is self-defeating, which means that because the fact that you are obligated to help the greater good, you are forced to do things that at the expense of yourself. For instance, I have to go to Africa to save people, even if I could die, because of the fact that that's benefiting the greater good. And because maybe I don't want to go to Africa, but I would have to do it anyways, and therefore nobody's actually maximizing happiness because I'm doing an act that I don't want to do, and I'm not happy. Not saying that I wouldn't want to go to Africa, but yeah. Number 8. Util is self-contradictory because it says that humans are valuable, but then it takes away their value by violating their rights for the sake of other people's rights. So you're taking away rights to protect rights. Okay. There are many, many more arguments against util, but those are just 9 arguments to help you guys. The rest you guys can come up with when you start, writing cases and debating. Okay. Answers to deontology, I only have 5, and some of them are repetitive, so, yeah. So the first response to deontology would be that when you evaluate whether the act in itself is moral, you're actually thinking about the consequences. Like, is it moral for me to save someone crossing the street? But by evaluating the morality of that action, you're actually thinking about what would happen in the future, right? Because you're thinking about, if I save this person, am I benefiting their life? Is the action good because will it cause them more happiness in the future? If I let them die, therefore their happiness will be taken away. So you're actually evaluating the if, right? Okay. And the only way to treat people truly equally is to maintain them as the ends in themselves, which means that treating them mathematically, 3 is greater than 1, 5 million is obviously greater than 1, is the only non-biased, non-subjective way to evaluate people, which means that util is the only way to evaluate someone equally and treat everybody give everybody the rights that they deserve. Okay, third of all is that policymakers and nations must use consequentialism because of the fact that they cannot sit around and do nothing. They have to evaluate what is good for the country, how many people are going to die, how many people will be saved, is this healthcare plan good, etc. They have to look at these things. They can't look at it from a deontological point of view. I'm giving really short explanations, but hopefully you guys can catch on. Fourth, deontology permits us to not do an action and allow for the world to be a worse place. It allows for mass killings. If I save this one person, it's like the example Aditya gave, the nuclear war example. If I save this one person, then there won't be a nuclear war. Or if I kill this one person, there won't be a nuclear war. But I can't kill this person because that's immoral. So, boom, nuclear war. Mass killings. But not my fault, right? But it's also pretty immoral. Number 5, you can't weigh the morality of an action, whether it's good or bad, without looking at the consequences. This is me struggling to come up with responses. This is pretty much the same as number 1. So basically the fact that you have to look at the consequences of an action in order to determine whether it's right or wrong. Even if you say you're looking at the act in itself, you're actually evaluating consequences to some kind of degree. It might be a bigger degree or a smaller degree. So here's a scenario that is anti-deontology. So you are in the age of the Holocaust. Hitler sends a Nazi to your door, and you are hiding your 3 best friends who happen to be Jewish. And the Nazi asks, are you hiding any Jewish people? And under deontology, lying is an immoral act because it's immoral. The act in itself is immoral. So therefore, you have to say yes. Okay, so in this scenario, they just took away your 3 best friends and killed them. Is this the morality system that we want? Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, there are a lot of arguments for both sides. The concepts are pretty basic, and as you debate, like trust me, just me explaining it is not going to make it completely clear. You're going to have to do a lot of debating, a lot of researching, and as you do that, you'll understand it, I promise. I promise, as you read, you'll understand more. It won't be that hard. So, I hope this helped, and good luck.